for your email.
Oh, look, I don't know. I'm
No,
busy,
thank you.
busy trying to find something that I saw.
Now being 7 o'clock, I declare the meeting open, and I welcome our viewers who are coming in from us streaming live. Everyone other than Councillor Ashby is in attendance, and he did forewarn that he may be an apology. So if we could perhaps just note him as an apology, because he did say he might get stuck where he was going to be. We now move on to, are there any leave of absences? No? No one's going away? I move on to confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 15th of February 2021. It has all been circulated and she has been read. Are there any questions of the minutes? If not, would someone move that they be confirmed as a true and accurate record?
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. May I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkins, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. No, glad I have water in it. I now, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Coleman.
For today,
Yes.
yes, the RSL in their meeting, I think it was paid item
14.3.5, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Page
14.3.5.
Thank you.
Can you fill in the conflict of interest form?
Yep.
It would be a material conflict, I think, Councillor Coleman, and therefore when the matter is discussed, we ask you to leave the room.
Yep.
Right. If you could fill in the form for the Secretariat. Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? No? There are no deputations, representations or presentations. We now move on to 5, the Mayor's Diary. Are there any questions of the Mayor's Diary? Yes, Councillor Joshi.
I just wanted to make a slight amendment that I wasn't there on the 11th of March. I realise it probably that was the same day that we had the tour for the Eastern Domestic Violence.
Oh no, you're an apology.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have picked that up. My apologies. Yes, just amend that. Thank you. It was a fantastic tour.
That's good.
If there aren't any further questions, would someone move that it's received and noted, please? Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Seconded, Councillor Joshi. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Reports from reports from elected members having attended training conferences or seminars. Has any member attended anything? No. Reports from the elected members having attended subsidiary board meetings. We have the minutes from the Adelaide Airport Corporation that Councillor Bishop has furnished us, and there for your perusal. Are there any comments you wish to make, Councillor Bishop, or the minutes sufficient? Thank you.
Your Worship, just before you put that to be accepted, just to explain to elected members, unfortunately there is no other area on the agenda for us to have placed this item, so clearly this is not a subsidiary of council, and it's not training, so we just realise that for these sorts of activities, when an elected member does attend something outside of a structured subsidiary meeting or a committee meeting of council, there's nowhere else to put it. So I think when we update our agenda next time, we'll just potentially include another area for that activity to be referenced.
Thank you. Would someone move that they be received and noted? Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Seconded, Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We move on to questions from the gallery. Theo, do we have any questions?
Your Worship, as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, there were no questions presented from members of the public.
Thank you. Questions without notice. Members, are there any questions without notice? No, we'll move on. Questions on notice. There are none. There are no petitions. Are there any motions without notice, members? No. We then move on to motions with notice. Which is Councillor Williams, the cost of footpaths and associated tree planting. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. This has really come out of the urban forest strategy. To be honest, given that over the next 20 years we have a target to increase our tree canopy by 20%, and recently I'd heard of a couple of other council areas where, since these targets have been set, their tree canopies, through no fault of their own, have actually decreased.
Urban infill.
Sorry?
Urban infill.
Yeah. So I guess really the idea behind this motion is that whenever we do any new footpaths or any new roads that we consider as part of the process, the plantings that we're going to do, and I guess part of this had come up, and I think it was the last meeting, it may have been the one before, when we were discussing the footpath from Smith Street up to the Oval to match the footpaths there, whether there's an opportunity to plant, and of course in the costings there was no inclusion for plantings in that area, and once again this occurred to me afterwards as well, with the Warwick Street footpath that's just been done, there's also no plantings there. Now you could probably comfortably argue that a lot of the trees, the gums that are along the picket fence there, give reasonable shade and cover to that footpath anyway on Warwick Street. However, it's just one of those things I thought we need to be acutely aware of if we're going to try and increase our tree canopy by 1% each year over the next 20 years. Given that we only have, I think from memory, and members of SPDPC or anyone correct me if I'm wrong, I think we only had somewhere in the vicinity of 8% of plantable area within the township that was public space to be able to plant in. So obviously we're looking for other changes, whether it be around better plantings, new developments and so on and so forth, to be able to meet our targets. So that's really the reason behind the motion. So I think I really...
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Do you wish to speak?
No, I think it's a great idea. I think we should look to increase our tree plantings at every opportunity we get.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Does anyone wish to speak? I'll let you speak for the motion if you wish. If not, are you happy? Do you wish to speak again, or are you happy for it to go to the vote?
No, I think I've said everything that I needed to. Thank you.
Thank you. All those, I'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Moving on to 14, reports requiring decision of council. 14.1, strategy. 14.1.1, the radio frequency identification on mobile garbage bins. I'm assuming you've read the report. Are there any questions regarding the report? Yes, Councillor.
I'm wondering why we don't give the residents an opportunity to pay, let's say, $2 per bin to have all the bins tagged. Because seriously, it's not going to put us financially out. You can have all your bins done for the cup of coffee, and I think we should perhaps encourage everybody to have their bins, or is that going to be a financial burden on just managing it and getting it done?
Through your worship, it's about $5 to retrofit them per bin.
All right, that's
as opposed to the
one cup of coffee.
Yeah, as opposed
a
to
week's worth of coffees.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why we went with the option of just roll them out as they become damaged or things like that, rather than trying to do a large scale to replace every bin. There'll be a significant cost.
I've been in our current house now for 15 years and we haven't replaced the bin yet.
No, have we?
So, the other alternative would be to put up a budget bid in future years for staging it throughout each suburb, so rather than one doing the whole township. You could do Gilberton, Medindi, Walkerville, Vale Park would be an option if you put set aside budget into the future to do that as well.
Should we not do that? But I would suggest that we look at, and East West may be able to advise us for reasons that the Mayor and I know or were told when we went to East West, that there are some areas that are trickier than others, And perhaps they should be the ones that are first tagged.
That's definitely an option to speak to East West about where they would recommend us targeting, because they have a fairly good idea on where
They do.
the trouble spots are, correct.
The only problem is the council doesn't own the green bins, we do. The residents own their own
But it's
green
not
bins.
just the green bins.
No,
that
no,
are
I'm
an
saying
issue.
that is an issue, the green bins are. It's
Oh, I
only the waste
understand
and
that.
recycling.
I understand that.
Although I always assumed the council owned the green bin. And I've obviously bought two. 'cause
I
have
bought
to.
6 the other day.
Gosh. Don't hear that one. Any other questions regarding it? Yes, Councillor
Oh,
Williams.
sorry.
Apologies.
I
I think we discussed this in the.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. But from memory, the RFID with the CEO and yourself or Councillor Bishop
It's
may
got a
remember
lot
too,
cheaper.
didn't get a Guernsey probably half a dozen years ago, 4 or 6 years ago, because from memory the cost was in excess of $100,000. I
That
really
was
like
$250,000,
this.
wasn't it? It was huge.
Close to, yeah, it was expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, it was expensive. This approach for minimal cost to get started on, to start on the process, I think is a good idea. And I think also, even if the cost has come down and you're looking at $100,000, I think over 4 years, that council would probably, as you suggested, Ben, as a budget bid, more than likely would be more likely to commit 25. So I really like the staged approach. The other thing that I like about staging the approach is, and I know that WAG has a meeting coming up soon that I'm meeting with yourself and Carly. Prior to that, is there are some other ideas in education that can go hand in hand with it. So as you're doing the RFID, some of the other things we might be putting in place, we've also already seen a decrease in the cost of our waste disposal in the last, was it 12 months or 6 months? It may well be the two meet each other as we bring them down and the other come up. They will play a part in improving the process. So yeah, I really like that idea.
Thank you,
And I'd
Councillor
be happy
Joshi.
to move for
Yeah.
recommendation.
My question was around the same thing about the educating part, because if you're gonna, have bins and you have contamination and you're gonna tag it and things like that, if people will be more aware of it, as to what would be the thing, are we gonna be fining people, or what? Was wondering what was the outcome of the whole thing, apart from the accountability of the bins.
Through your worship, that would be what we can allow us to do is do some targeted education. So if we've got repeat offenders, it's not about necessarily fining, it's about educating about what goes in what bin and the impact that has down the line. So it would be more useful for an educational purposes rather than trying to seek out to fine and do those types of things.
And so we'll probably put that in our weekly roundups. People, that's the intention. That's good. So I'm really for this. I think it's great.
So should we be putting up a motion that we have a budget bid for a staged radio frequency bin?
Your Worship, given that we are getting ready to go to our second budget workshop, perhaps if council leaves that to administration, we've heard the discussion tonight, would be happy to present that,
Okay.
so we don't need a formal motion. Given that, I think is it next week or the week after we've got our workshop,
Next
so we'll
week.
take care of that and we'll bring it forward.
Okay.
And that gives us the opportunity to do some preliminary costings for council's consideration, as whether or not we do a continued staged approach or whether we do in fact do them all at the same time or suburb by suburb. So we'll look at a few scenarios, Your Worship.
Thank you. Well, the motion is there, unless anyone else has any more questions. The motion or recommendation is there.
I'm happy
Would
to
someone
move.
move that? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Seconded, Councillor Joshi. And I put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to, 14.2.1, the Development Assessment Refund and Waiver Policy. This has been, the papers have been distributed. Are there any questions regarding it? We went up for public consultation, we didn't get any feedback. If not, if there are no questions, is everyone happy if I just put the motion? Oh, sorry, ask for a mover first. Councillor Fernand, yeah. Seconder, please. Councillor Bishop, all those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 14.3.1, the Walkerville signage project, stage 2. All the background papers were furnished. Are there any questions of the papers? Councillor Furlan.
Just to get the numbers and the timing of it, the way I read it, 50,000 was allocated in the 1920 budget. 12 odd thousand was used for the designs, and we don't need to spend any more money on the design.
No, SPDPC through your worship signed off on the final design.
And there was 35,000 left from that budget, but we didn't roll it over, we just let that go. So we're left with the suburb signage, which was Appendix D, that was 53,000, that's already been budgeted for.
That will already be covered through Ben's capital expenditure budget line.
So we're looking for 76,000 to cover the streets of distinction and the heritage trail markers.
Correct.
Knowing that we've already spent 12,000 for the designs,
Yeah.
and 35,000 we just didn't roll over.
Yeah, that's correct.
So all up with all those streets of distinction, heritage trail markers and suburb signage, that's about 129,000 to get everything done.
That's right.
That's not correct, is it? Because that 35 was something that wasn't carried forward from another budget. So
We
that's
didn't
not-
spend it, they didn't spend
That's
it.
not expenditure. It's the combination of the cost of the signs and the consultancy fees is the total.
The total cost, so it's the 76,000 with the 12,000 plus the 53,000. I mean, because there's still 53,000 we're going to be expending.
So the suburb the suburb markers are $53,000, and that has been that will be financed through our existing budget. What we are seeking through budget review 2 is 76,000 to cover the remaining collective project implementation for the heritage trail markers and the streets of distinction. So we've done the design work, so it wouldn't have been 76,000, it would have been all up 76 plus 12.
Yeah.
So that those three
88,000.
items collectively are the total that Councillor Furlan's just put to us, 130 something.
Yeah.
Oh, I
However-
thought Councillor Furlan was referring to the cost that was there, the consultancy fee plus the 35 that was in a previous
No.
budget but never
No.
carried forward.
No.
However, this is not operational expense,
Yeah.
this is capital
Yeah.
expenditure, so it's only cash flow.
Yeah.
It's not,
I was
doesn't,
just trying
doesn't
to look at
affect our
the
revenue.
history of the numbers.
No,
and
no,
where-
no, but I'm just, it's
Yeah.
important that that's noted. Yes,
Sorry,
Councillor Nicky.
do we capitalise all our signage?
I can't answer that question.
So is this something I was a bit surprised that we capitalise this
Indeed.
project. How does this work compared to a normal street sign?
Through you, Chair, I have attached in the attachments the designs and what make these signs different to just your standard street signage and I guess corporate identifications. These are considered to be more assets. I guess by virtue of the fact that they had a bespoke brief that was then implemented specifically by a graphic designer. So in my discussions with finance manager and assets manager, we were looking at how we handle these, and I guess here on they will require maintenance and upkeep more so than your standard street sign, and therefore qualify for what we would capitalise, an asset that we would capitalise. So gateway signs, wayfinding signage, things that are not off the shelf. That's how it's considered it.
Yeah. So is it more, so the maintenance for these signs beyond other signage, is it just more the, we call it the code? I mean, what's the extra maintenance that goes into these signage more
I
than
guess, through your chair, the replacement cost of them would be significantly more, and we would have to identify them on our insurance ledger, I think is something that I've talked to Ben about as well. So because they're distinctly different, streets of distinction signage, we are looking at them as an asset. That means capitalising. Have I missed anything, Ben?
It's more around the, because they're bespoke, we can't just go and get another sign for $80 off the shelf. We have to go and get them custom to retrofit them back in. So there's a QR code that needs to be regularly updated. And obviously if they're damaged, it's not a just straighten the pole, we're done. It's going to be a full replacement, and you're looking at sort of $3,000 to $5,000 a sign, depending on which type it is.
So the suburb markers, for example, how much would they be?
They're just under $4,000
Yeah.
per sign, and we would be ordering an extra 2. The laser cut signage with the lettering comes, it's quite negligible in cost, but it's the actual pylon sign and the foundation that we're looking at.
And sorry, I couldn't work, when I read through the report, I couldn't work, how many suburb markers are we having? Because on the map it just showed like, one on Walkerville Terrace and Gilton and Walkerville, but how many, are we going to have them on North East Road as well, Walkerville Terrace?
Yeah, a minimum of 2 per suburb markers that have to go through the mapping and see exactly what was
A
costed.
minimum of 2? Oh, is that?
Yes, entry points, so.
Yeah, so there'll be like a transition from Gilberton to there'll be one on each side, will there?
No, there will be Walkerville and Val Park will be a single sign that's double-sided depending on approach. So if you're coming through towards the roundabout at Levi Caravan Park, just as you approach it will be Val Park, and then as you come back towards Walkerville. So I can go through it. I'd have to open the attachment.
There's 11 there.
So 11 all up.
11 of the suburb markers.
Yeah, so I guess if you do the maths, 55,000 divided by 11, look at that, just under $4,000.
Yeah, look, I mean, I know everybody's in favour of this, but I think the educational signs are fantastic, about the history and everything. I read through that and I thought they were great ideas. I think the size of our suburb markers are significant. I don't see the value in them personally. I mean, I know where I am within a suburb, and I'm pretty sure most people do. And for 4,000, and for something that can be vandalised pretty easily, and something that can, be, potentially hit by a car. To me, it's just something that I just don't see the value in. But I'm not gonna. I know everybody else is going to support us, so I'm just speaking up. But anyway.
Yes,
So just to clarify, this is the streets of distinction and heritage trail markers. It's all we're considering here, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not the
suburbs. Sorry, I missed that.
There's an acknowledgement within the report that originally, to satisfy the full scope and vision of the 2010 document, the suite of signage was threefold. It was the suburb markers, the streets of distinction, and the heritage trail markers. So the report reflects that in this financial year, we are able to cover within existing budget allocation an expenditure for around $55,000 for the suburb markers. Therefore, we're not looking for funding opportunities at budget review 2 for that component of the project, because we can cover it within existing means. What we are looking to is to, I guess, provide closure to that suite of 3 signage projects, and that is for the 2 heritage trail markers and the streets of distinction.
Okay, so dot point 4,
Yeah.
where it says the administrators proceed to manufacture and installation of the suburb markers. So you're asking for to go ahead with the. That's the third part of that. To me, we're giving you that it is part of that motion. That's the way I read it.
Yes, it may be interpreted that way, but I think the numbers reflect that we're looking for funding for just the latter 2 components, and in an attempt to make this tidy and tied up with a nice bow around and say we are delivering the full package with your support. It's been included in the resolution.
So I am voting for the full package.
Financially, you're voting for 2 out of 3.
Could we tidy the recommendation up potentially? So dot point 4 could just be remove suburb markers.
Sure.
Could I move an amendment?
I have to move an amendment. Yeah.
It's not an amendment, Your Worship. Nobody's moved anything yet.
Oh, sorry.
So you can just amend
I'll
it.
just vary
With everyone's agreement, you can amend it.
vary point 4 to removal of suburb markers. And you can vote it down as
No, I just want to say that this, am I allowed to speak
No.
in support?
No.
Just
You
have
can
to
speak
get
in
the
support.
suburb markers.
You may, Councillor Bishop.
This has been a project that has been going ever since I joined council in 2014, and I embrace it. I love the concept. It has taken us a really long time to get to this stage. The other day I was doing my voyeur through Facebook and Instagram, and there was a comment that came up through SA Tourism about, did anybody else see it, about the most beautiful suburbs in Adelaide? Medindi and Stirling were the two that came up immediately, and then and Walkerville was mentioned as well when they got into the role of it. And I thought people really love our suburbs, and they admire them, and they note them, and they are very desirable. Our house prices are going through the roof because everybody wants to live here. And for God's sake, we've got a flight path over the top of us. We're surrounded by major roads, and yet everybody still wants to live in this vicinity. And it's because it's beautiful. So the more we can do to enhance and make our suburbs visually attractive, I think we go for it. So I'll be voting yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Are there any further questions of the paper? Do you have questions of the paper?
This is just a question to administration. That what is the? I just wanted to check what the net effect is for you guys in the suburb markers being removed from that recommendation. I'm assuming that it's no.
There is no effect. It's recognising, and Councillor Nanke's really highlighting that having reference to the suburb markers here, we're actually seeking council's endorsement, and Councillor Nanke's identified that that's in actual fact not what we're doing, because the suburb markers is already funded out of the capital projects, so it has a separate budget line. So removing the reference to the suburb markers has nil effect to the outcome. We will be proceeding with it. What the intent of administration was to just really acknowledge, for council to acknowledge that the suburb markers will be going up for production.
Yeah, that's right. And I just wanted to make sure, make certain for everyone's benefit when we're voting, to make sure that everyone understands that there is no difference in the end. Because once again, this is a project, and no doubt for administration too, it probably feels like it's a project 10 years in the making, that finally we have the opportunity to be able to finish the project off. So similarly to Councillor Bishop, I'll also be voting in favour of this, and I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Sorry, so when we get to the budget review, that's all included, the suburb markers are all included in that. So what you're saying then, CEO, is that we've already gone down this path, it's already been approved under another motion earlier, that the suburb markers were to go to manufacturing and installation and to be installed.
Through your worship, the cost associated with the suburb markers has already been determined by council. So what we haven't done yet is we haven't gone to manufacture. We've been essentially holding off, waiting for the outcome of this, so we could all go in one hit and hopefully try to get a better price.
Yeah, but the removal of the suburb markers now?
It will have no impact because we're still going to be delivering the suburb markers. We'll still produce, we'll still manufacture, go to manufacture and installation. It just won't form part of this conversation, specifically in relation to the $76,100 that we're seeking for budget review too.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I can talk to you more about it later, but I'm not going to get support here anyway, so we'll just let it fly. But,
so I think the important thing to, for reference here, is that the suburb markers has already been determined, has already been approved as part of the budgeting process. So the decision to proceed with the suburb markers has already been made.
Okay. Yeah. Just another question about the asset management site. So what's the life cycle? I mean, what's the useful life of the sign? What are we depreciating these over?
I think we've got 25.
20, yeah, I thought it was 20.
About 25. Yeah, we've got 25 on the signs.
So when I eventually ask for the depreciation to be included in the asset management plans, we're going to start including suburb markers or whatever the this project is, the signing project, I suppose you'll call it.
What's been capitalised.
Yeah.
Your Worship, I actually, it's an interesting conversation that Councillor Nenke has raised, because it's a little bit of the conversation you and I had earlier today that is directly in relation to Budget Review 2 agenda item, whereby in one of the notations that has been presented in that report, I think it was notation number 9 from memory, 8, thank you, it references that Council doesn't actually have a policy position on what value should trigger a capitalisation.
So we have a capitalisation policy, yeah.
Correct. And so when Budget Review 2 was going to be discussed later today, we were going to talk to that and outline that the thinking from administration is that we will test the thinking around that and what does that look like, do some analysis and research compared to other councils in the vicinity.
That's a good point, because I'd say most councils only depreciate about 5,000.
Correct.
And you sit underneath.
Correct.
So.
And so, you know, we've assigned a $2,500 value for the purposes of Budget Review 2. Is that the right figure? Is that what we should be doing? And how should we capture other things? So doing a bit of research around that, looking what other councils do, put it through the audit committee, put it through to our internal control auditor, and potentially, if a need be, is to look to updating or revising the financial guiding principles so that we can reflect a policy position in regards to that.
So it's not an arbitrary decision, it's set in stone.
So your questions tonight are so pertinent to the conversation that sits behind the or markers, signage full stop, and other assets.
Yeah, look, signage is really important as a whole. I mean, Campbelltown Council New South Wales, I read their asymmetrical town, they actually capitalise their signage, and it's surprising to see how much signing council actually has. It's when you think about every street sign, every giveaway sign, every anything. It's quite a lot of value. It would be a couple of $1 million, and probably not this council, but anyway, but no, to my mind, no council actually capitalises signage, so it'll be interesting.
Okay, we have a motion that's been moved. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wilkins, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do actually, thank you, Mayor. I think I was quite not against this, I guess this project to begin with, but being involved in SPDBC, I think I've come to see the value of it and actually be quite, I guess, engaged by the process and also quite proud, I think, of where we've got to as the SPDBC for the design and the areas that we're looking to, I guess, note and beautify as well. So.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against? Are you waving?
No, I'm for. I was going to say the same thing. I think it's always spoken. Because
Any further speakers against? If not, is everyone happy if I put the motion? All those in favour? Good, carried. 14.3.2, I think we'll look.
I'm really pleased.
Well, I'm pleased. We've actually been able to close the 2010 Walkerville signage project. We can give it a big tick or cross it out. It's done.
Well, and also
And I think it will look spectacular.
what Conrad said was pertinent as well. We went back a lot of times.
Councillor Wilkins.
Sorry, Councillor. We went back a lot of times to get. We weren't going to be happy until we got what we thought was the right result. So I'm glad we did.
And I can stop now envying
Madrid, Milan.
St Peters.
Springfield and their signage.
We now move on to 14.3.2, the Willow Bend toilet upgrade. You've all received the papers and the detailed reports. Are there any questions of the report? Yes, Councillor Fairland.
Just to clarify, on page 86 it refers to 2 by DDA for 235,000, and then on page 88 for the same price it's a new one by DDA.
That's because it's part of the ordinary council meeting. The following was resolved. That's part of that resolution. and then they found it was going to cost too much,
Yeah.
and that what they thought was going to cost 235, being two of them, was actually one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Fine. So it is one for
It
235.
is only one.
Okay.
Yes,
That's it.
Councillor Wilkins, you
Thank
have a question?
Yeah, it's just in regards to any use of a new site where we don't demolish. So we retain existing facility. Do we need to make good anything other than what has been retaining all repairs there for that existing facility to use as storage?
Through your worship, there will need to be further works which aren't included. This would have to be a bid to refurbish it to turn from a toilet into a storage facility, which isn't included in this. But in terms of immediate rectification, we can kind of shut the doors and use this for small bits of storage, but you wouldn't be able to make it a full storage facility at this stage.
Okay. So then potentially further funds later on that we have to spend to make that happen.
Which would be through a bid process.
Okay.
Are there any other further questions? Councillor Williams, you have a
Thank you,
question?
Mayor Fricker. Similar to Councillor Furlan, I was a little confused too with that now that you point out that it was part of the previous resolution. But I was just wondering where, because there's the discussion there of the, and I mentioned before about the footpath upgrade on Smith Street, is that still part of this, or is that part of an old?
Through your worship, that was just for the background. I pulled out the table. That was just to give some context around the 317,000 was made up of those three projects, of which 235 was for the toilet. So if we were to increase the cost there, then either the to drop off there, or we look at an alternative solution, being a single toilet on an adjacent site.
So you're saying that essentially from the project that had three parts to it, the toilets at Willow Bend, the tennis courts and the basketball ring and the Smith Street footpath or pavers, it comes to the 317 with one toilet. So essentially with the two, it would have meant that the other two projects wouldn't have been able to be funded. Is that
correct?
Sorry, it's another way of putting probably what you've just said, but I'm getting it straight in my head.
That's correct.
I'm happy with option one. And I'm happy to put it up, support that motion.
The option one is just including the one toilet, 235,000. But if you put the second loo in, it goes at 292,000. Logic would dictate for the difference of 50,000 or whatever, or 60,000. It'd be better off putting the two in if you look at the population growth, etc. Is there an argument for that?
Well, I've never seen anybody stop and use that toilet.
Trucks all the time.
Now,
Well, truckies, they
But
can
I
wait.
don't think there's there's a queue, so I don't think it's an issue. I don't think that limiting it from 2 to 1 is going to have major repercussions. We just have to wait for a few minutes.
And if it's a truckie, you could just sneak around the corner.
that's all right.
That's not really the behaviour we want to promote, is
I
this?
think we'll just forget that comment. Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. I was also concerned, given there's not a massive difference in between the two. However, I believe in the agenda item it explains it fairly well when they talk about queue times and stuff like that. And I really just don't see. I mean, I think the usage could double, and it still wouldn't be an issue when they describe well the times.
Yes, Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I forgot to ask this before. The preferred location of the single or the double, does it have to be additional works? Because I know it's quite steep in that area to make that wheelchair accessible.
Through your worship, the site over to the adjacent to the shelter to the left, so that requires slightly more earthworks, but we can get a DDA grade across with from the footpath there now up to that. But obviously the preferred location with the single is we have to do a little bit of retaining around the back, but it's basically on the same level as the existing one, so all of the existing infrastructure will they can go straight in.
Councillor Furlan.
I just want someone to explain to me the closing surplus from budget review 2 if we assume we go with option 1, which was recommended. So we had an opening surplus of $15,000.
Can I just say something? This is cash flow only. It's not operating expenses because this is a capitalised asset.
Okay.
Alright, so it's only capital expenditure. It's only cash flow you're looking at. You're not looking at the revenue, the profit and loss as such, for want of a better description.
Still has an effect on our loan.
Pardon? Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. It's a cash flow, it's not operating.
But I'm just, well, excuse my ignorance, right?
That's right.
But with budget review 1, we had a closing surplus of
Correct.
15,222.
Mm-hmm.
So after budget review 2, what will our closing surplus be?
You've got it there with you've got total income of 807. This is column 1. This is on page 94, 95.
Yep.
We've got 872, 247 against 842. So you've got an operating surplus before capital amounts of 106.
Yep.
44,000 after that.
Yeah, so the closing surplus will be
44,
44,988. Is that right?
as far as I'm aware.
That's
Right,
how I
right.
read it.
It'll be
That's how
106
106, yes. Right.
106,
Hmm.
336.
for the one
Yeah.
toilet. And then if we put through 2, it'll still be the same, but the comprehensive income will be a
Yeah.
deficit.
So assuming option 1 is, I'm just trying to get my head around the 15,000, what our new BR2 surplus will be. So our new BR2 surplus will be 106 or 44?
106.
106. Okay. Right, that's all. Thank you.
You will wait, Councillor Walker.
I was just happy to move the
Thank you.
motion with option 1 and the preferred location.
Thank you. Councillor Bishop, you should second it.
I will.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak? Do you wish to speak for the motion?
Oh, I think I think it's a great idea. It needs an upgrade, and I think this is pertinent use of the funds.
And I like the preferred position too because it's further away from the road and less toilety looking. Sorry. I mean, you know I'm into the beautification of
Yes.
Walkerville.
Does anyone wish to speak against? If not, is everyone happy if I put the motion? All those in favour? Sorry, we'll start that again. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Sorry, Mayor.
Suddenly thought you were voting against it.
No.
Didn't think
You
were.
just Merrily just raised a question there about the location, which I didn't think about earlier, and that just something for interest. It's all, but just for like what do I call it? Set to for line of sight and just for safe. Is that just I don't know? Is that a good location for that? Given it's behind another building and
So
not worried about little kids and
So the preferred location is still visible from the car park and the road. It's only when you're basically right alongside the building that you'll kind of lose it, and then as you come out the other side, past the tennis courts, you could see back. So
as long as you've considered it,
Yep.
it's all good. Happy.
Right, thank you. Moving to 14.3.3, Budget Review 2. They've been distributed. Everyone's read them. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Furlong?
Just be interested to know what the rate is now, because bond rates have gone up. Have we gone over the 2.05%?
2.31 as of today.
It will never come back.
No.
And that's a good thing because it means that we're recovering. So it is bad in one instance, but it's good for the world. Are there any questions regarding Budget Review 2? Councillor Williams.
I'm sorry to do this again, Mayor Fricker. However, in the recommendation, there's once again no reference to the other two items. The basketball, the resurface of the tennis.
They're not affected, through your worship. They are not affected at all. This was in relation to whether or not we proceeded with one exilu or two. If we went with the two exilu, it would have been the $292,000, which would have had an increase in our budget. But this has nothing to do with the tennis court or the
Paving.
The paving, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams.
Give it a second.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? No? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Move on to 14.3.4, which is the Treasury report. The CAD fixed rate update. Councillor Fernand's already asked about the rate.
Yeah, I jumped the gun, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm trying to think what's it got to do with the tennis ball. 3%.
I knew it. You were just jumping around. That's right. It was all money. That's what it was all
It's now
about.
2.35.
2.30.
Different speed than the rest of us.
Are there
And
any-
so we've missed the 2.05. And I don't think they're going to come back because
No, they're
I
not.
think the interest rates are going to go up to control or suppress the residential or the housing market. You don't think so?
No, they'll use APRA again.
Yeah.
They'll just tighten it.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Fernand.
Given we needed probably to be a bit more responsive because it has to keep coming back to the minute, should we just approve this and leave that there for a period of say 6 months in case for some reason it does drop back down below 2.05?
Your Worship, the recommendation actually gives delegates authority to administration to monitor the movement, and should it reduce below 2.05%, administration can act immediately. And then we will just simply report back to the chamber what we've done, because if we keep coming backwards and forwards, we're never going to make it. As we've just sadly discovered from the last episode when council actually considered this matter. So the recommendation literally provides council provides administration the capacity to be able to proceed to set at a fixed rate, well, if it doesn't drop.
On that note, I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Fernand. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Do you wish to speak for the motion? No.
No.
Councillor Bishop? Do you
No,
wish to speak?
I support it. I don't need to say anything.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 14.3.5, Walkerville RSL. We request that Councillor Coleman leaves the room as he has a material conflict of interest, as he is the president of the RSL, the Walkerville RSL.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
That's his capture.
You can turn around.
Everyone has read the report regarding the MOU. Are there any questions regarding the MOU? Yes, Councillor
For
Bishop.
some reason, I thought historically we gave $12,000. And I
You
always...
waited two?
Did you?
No. Sorry, no.
It's always only been 10.
Yes, because I moved it for it to be the sponsorship. I remember when I did.
Councillor Williams,
My recollection is 10 as well.
did they come back to us last year and ask for more?
Through you, Your Worship, they did come back 2 years ago, I think it's 2.5 years ago, and requested an extra $3,000 to assist with some funding, and it was approved at that time, just for that one-off.
And so we
Same
gave
one.
them 12 at that time or 13 at that
No,
time?
the extra 3 was given at that time,
Right, that's right.
and it wasn't a rollover part of the MOU with them, and that's why we're just clearing this up, that it's written in the MOU.
It's formalising it.
Yes, correct.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Frick. I think through some of that too, I remember some discussion around some road closures at one stage in looking at increasing the funding, and we thought that there were other ways that we could handle that instead of having to do road closures, and probably knock back some funding based on that. and also the other thing I was going to say around this agenda item is, hopefully, and I know it's probably only a couple of weeks before we hear about the sporting precinct. Hopefully, Friday, is it? Okay.
Friday.
Hopefully, at some point in time, although I'm not against this, in fact I'm happy to move it, that there may be an opportunity to have some form of screen, permanent screen in an area somewhere or another that may be able to be used for all sorts of different public events that we have. Safety would be the main issue if you had it tucked away somewhere where it could be vandalised. Similar to what they do with St Andrews have got their screen on the corner there. I'm sure that probably the bowling and sports club would also like to have access to be able to utilise. So I think the extra cost for the screens, yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation. I think there's a bigger conversation around what advertising may be done in that area if we are successful.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams has moved the motion. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Furlong. Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Against the motion? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. I'll invite Councillor Coleman back into the room, please. We're pleased to know, Councillor Coleman, we agreed to increase it to 13,000.
Good. Otherwise, they're going to cut it down to a tent.
Right, we now move on to agenda item 14.3.6, the PDI Act Delegations Update. Do you wish to just give it a little?
Yes, I will, thank you, Your Worship. Council may recall that they actually did cite the delegations report late last year. It's come back into the chamber predominantly because we've just had a review undertaken, independent review undertaken of the delegations, particularly around the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act, because so much it's moving very, very quickly in relation to some of the regulations that are coming out. So it's a constant changing space. We wanted to make sure that the delegations that Council authorised or approved for me to have was actually in line with the legislation. And through the independent review that we undertook through Norman Waterhouse, who also does the delegations template on behalf of the Local Government Association, they discovered a couple of anomalies with what Council had delegated to the CEO compared to what they're proposing now. Particularly, and those that are highlighted in green in the report are in, and I'm sure they're green, yes, in relation to previously Council had delegated to the CEO by way of Council resolution. The legal team from Norman's indicated that it's either one or the other. You either delegate to the CEO or you delegate, or it stays with Council. So this is really just cleaning up to remove that reference of delegated to the CEO or by through Council resolution. So this is just making it quite clear. Council makes the decision. Once Council has made the decision, it automatically becomes an instrument of delegation to myself to action the outcome of that activity. We'll be doing reviews twice yearly, independent reviews twice yearly, given that we don't have a governance officer on staff, and the current position that I have advertised for Council Secretariat does not include governance. So my thinking these days is that I'd much rather have an independent evaluation undertaken twice a year to make sure that all legislation delegations are where they need to be and they have been audited in that regard. So this report unfortunately has to be represented because there was an error made in November last year.
Does anyone have any questions of the report?
Okay. Happy to support it.
You're happy to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Joshi. Can I have a seconder then? Thank you, Councillor Furlong. Do either of you wish to speak to the motion? No. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 14.4.4, which is the Era Water Budget Review 2. You have the papers. Does anyone have any questions regarding budget review and the cash flow report? Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Frigga. I was just wondering, out of the audit committee, they sent some recommendations back, and one of them was recommending to council that they request Era Water to reconsider the price of water supply to constituent councils as originally budgeted, but that's not included in the recommendation. I was just wondering the reason behind that.
Sorry, through your worship, I'm just trying to find the original
Sorry,
recommendation.
the recommendation is on
page
page 213, and the points out of the audit committee are on the following page, and it's the third dot point.
Through your worship, I obviously missed that in the recommendation put to council. Apologies.
Yeah, because just having read through it, and I'd be happy to take any commentary from any of the members of the audit committee as well, but I'm assuming it would have been their intention for that third dot point to be included in the recommendation. So, if so, I would like to change the recommendation or the motion there to include that dot point 3.
Your worship, if Councillor Williams is proposing to do that, which is absolutely appropriate, there is another bullet point there, Councillor, which talks about, recommends to Council that consideration be given to including the budgeted results of subsidiaries in their annual business plan and budget and long-term financial plan. Elected members will recall that we actually did start that conversation with you at your first budget workshop, and whilst that was not a formal process and the informal gathering does not have the ability to make decisions, there was a sense that that wouldn't necessarily be something that Council would support. But I think to formalise it, we probably need to put it through. Councillor Williams, if you're happy to do so.
Yeah, sorry, funnily enough, I actually missed it. I actually thought that was that's the second dot point you're talking
Yes,
about. I
correct.
actually thought that was captured in
After
point
the-
3 that's up there, but it's
Yeah,
not,
it's
because
not.
point 3 that's up there is
But
actually
it's-
just
but
the
it's-
first dot
But
point.
it was
scenarios.
discussed at the. It was discussed.
That's correct, Your Worship. And
So-
that's in essence why that wasn't included in this report, but for purposes of formality and making sure that it's not missed, formally missed, because informal gatherings can't make decisions, it would be useful to have that there, which is also, it's a trigger for administration to make sure at the budget workshops that we actually are addressing these issues for Council's consideration.
Well, I think they're good ideas out of the audit committee, most definitely. So it's really just a matter of adding the dot point to
Just
the
happening
dot
now.
point 3, and which gives you number 4 and 5. And if they're added, I'm happy to move.
So what was the other one? You wanted the.
The dot point above it as well.
The one immediately above it, Your Worship, in the audit committee's
Yeah,
recommendations.
and I know how it's going to be put though.
It may be better off to move what you've got there as 4 at the moment to 5, and put that second dot point at 4, just so that it replicates the recommendation from the audit committee.
Remember, that can stay there, but then separate item. The council consider including the budgeted results.
I mean, we can consider it at the workshop, but personally I don't even think we need the word considering, we can just do it. But we can leave that to or not to the workshop to decide, but to then be the recommendation back.
So are we still asking us to consider that? Or that we have considered it and we've determined not to?
Your Worship, sorry, if I could just come in. Because notwithstanding that we had a preliminary conversation at a workshop, we probably need just to formalise it, that's what council, that we know that we can say, yes, that actually happened. And when we report back, we can let you know that we had it at this discussion. We'll bring it back again because of the scenarios.
So, but also when the budget's actually approved.
That's right.
We can say that we've reviewed it and decided
As part of
to
council,
either do it or not do it. It's Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was the one of the audit committee that raised around us undertaking a scenario analysis, and so within the Era Water long-term financial plan, I've got a high rainfall case and a low rainfall case. So I've got two cases. Obviously, neither of them consider. They consider obviously ongoing lifting of the debt ceiling, and there was a number of us that were concerned that Town of Walkerville has to make a decision in the coming probably year on whether to support lifting that or not. So my request to the council to support is that we undertake a scenario analysis with the high case as a basis, and we either have something on the lines of what it means to Town of Walkerville if that occurs ongoing, what it means if your water fails after say 5 years, or we don't support any lifting of the debt cap, what that means now, remove support for your water, and then the same three kind of scenarios under a low flow case. Just to give us an idea of what it means for us crystallising that debt and or continuing to support your water into the future. I haven't been prescriptive about those cases. I guess I asked Mayor if you think that we need to be prescriptive about what scenarios.
No, I don't
or
think so.
administration were quite comfortable before about.
I think we're comfortable.
Yeah.
Your Worship.
I think they've got
We've
time.
heard the debate at the audit committee. We certainly have access to Councillor Wilkins if we stumble and we think we need a bit more
And also
direction,
and also Michael
and also
Richardson.
you and yourself as well, Your Worship. Yeah. Your
Okay.
Worship,
Happy to-
Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Frick. I was just going to say these are some of the scenarios that Era Water were talking about prior to Christmas last year that they were going to provide for us,
Correct.
which haven't been forthcoming. So I think it's very timely that Councillor Wilkins brings this up, and that if it's not going to be done for us, we need to do it ourselves.
They got sidelined at the last meeting.
The second, if we need a second.
If
Yeah,
Councillor
I
Williams,
was happy to move the
happy to
recommendation.
move now. Councillor Wilkins seconded. Are there any further questions or comment, or does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Sorry. No, I'll then put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to identification of items for individual consideration. I shall read them out. 16.3.1, 16.3.2, 16.3.3, 16.3.4. Thank you. 16.5. Thank you. Would someone move that 16.3.1, 0.2.3? Thank you. Councillor Williams, Councillor Wilkins, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. We now move on to 16.3.4. Councillor Furlan, you had a question?
Yes, it's just the rates that are owing this time. Last year, I think we're behind by 400,000, and it seems to be just growing every month. And I'm just wondering if there's any sort of actions or any sort of comments related to that.
Yeah, through your worship. So the rates are due on the 18th of March. So It's at the end of this week. We've seen quite an influx this week of them, and we're just noticing people, as I said, I think last time, people are paying quarterly, not paying in advance.
Right, that's all. Thank you.
Your Worship, while given that this matter's been poured out for discussion, it might be useful if the group manager can bring council up to date with its outstanding sundries.
Yes, please.
Through Your Worship, as you can see, the total sundry debtors is 79k. Through speaking with the CEO today, we're going to provide more detail to council moving forward to understand what they relate to, and also given when reports are delivered to you, an update whether that's been paid or not. So that'll give you a bit more of an updated amount.
So do you want to talk to us about Adelaide City Council,
Yeah,
some of these, like what are they?
Yeah, Adelaide City Council is a long service leave entitlement transfer over. We've got number 2, an individual's town hall hire. We've got the LRR cost recovery bill. We've also got a number 4, which I thought might be of interest, is Ride Hill. So
Yes, I
Levi.
thought that was paid.
So speaking with Scott, that's the last and final water bill. He actually came back to us and said he had prepaid, so we've reissued the invoice and now we're waiting payment.
Okay.
The other ones of interest, individual 2 is dangerous dog collars. Individual 3 is, let me just see, a removal of a tree. And the last one, the Walkerville Lawn Tennis Club, that's the CPI increase on their lease. Is there any other questions?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Would you move maybe accepting? Seconder? Seconder, please. Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 16.5. 16.3.5.
Thanks, Mayor. For
Councillor Wilkins.
mine was into regards to a motion without notice that Councillor Bishop raised in December, CNC 225/21-22. I don't see it on outstanding resolutions. I'm not sure if that's where it's supposed to live, but
Councillor, what was the motion?
it was in regards to the triangle of Lansdowne, Ascot.
Oh, yes. Oh, no, we're actioning that.
No, it's in here. I've
It's
seen
in
it.
it, is
Yeah.
it?
Yes, it is. I saw it. I was
Yeah,
checking up on what I was up to.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember at the top. Thank you. Ah, yes. Do see that there.
And they're going up for public consultation in April. Well, the residents in there, that area. Community consultation.
Are you happy then to move
Sure. Yep.
acceptance of that report? May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Furlong. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now moving to correspondence. The 3 letters are tabled. If there are no questions, would someone move that they be received and noted? Councillor Williams, second to Councillor Joshi. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Is there any urgent other business, members? If not, I declare the meeting closed at 8:08.
Is this the shortest meeting we've ever had?